Assalamu alaikum students. Today I'm going to teach you about the use of comma. Where we use comma in English language, there are some rules and condition of using comma in right way. So let's start with detail that where we need to use the comma and where we don't need to use comma in right way in English language. So let's start. So the first use of the comma is that to separate atoms in a list. It means that, for example, I say that I bought sugar, milk, vegetables and fruits from the market. So whenever I would describe many atoms in a list, in a sentence, that time we would separate all these atoms by using a comma except the last atom, and there we would use a conjunction, that is and or but. So I bought milk, sugar, fruits and vegetables from the market. So we are here using the comma to separate all the atoms except the last atom. We would not use the comma there, we would use the conjunction. And so if there are two atoms in a list, so that time we would not use the comma. For example, I say that I bought milk and sugar, that time we would use conjunction. And so the first use of the comma is to separate atoms in a list. So the second use of the comma is to separate words that are not part of the sentence. To separate atoms, it means that separate words, to separate words in a sentence. For example, I say that frankly, unfortunately, fortunately, hopefully, these type of sentence are the sentence adverb, because they are not part of the sentence. These are called the extra words, we can say. So we use comma before after these words. For example, I say that unfortunately he had failed. So we would use here the comma because this is not part of the sentence, this is the main sentence, this is the writer's opinion, this is our own opinion, the main sentence is he had failed. So we would use comma to separate the main sentence and the writer's opinion. So to separate words in a sentence. Take another example, that is frankly. That is also the sentence adverbs. Frankly, it doesn't matter, we can say I don't care. I don't care he agrees with me or not. I don't care he agrees with me or not. So we would use here the comma. We are separating the sentence adverbs by using comma. So these are the two use of the comma, uses of the comma. And the third use of the comma is to address, whenever we address to someone, whenever we call the name of any person. For example, I say that Ahmed, come here and help me. So we would use comma after Ahmed because we are addressing to Ahmed, we are calling to Ahmed, we want to talk to Ahmed. So that time we would use comma. Addressing Ahmed, come here and help me. So we are using here comma. And whenever we write the formal letters in salutation and greetings, we say that dear sir. After this we use comma, dear madam, or we call the name of any person. That time we also use a comma. In the closing, it's mean in the formal letter, in the closing, at the end of letter, we say that yours loving daughter, yours loving son, or sometimes we say yours sincerely. So that time we also use, after these words, yours sincerely, yours faithfully, yours loving daughter, we also use comma. So you have to keep in mind whenever we address to someone, for example, dear sir, madam, or we call the name of any person, we use comma. You have to keep in mind. And the last use of comma is whenever we connect the clauses. Whenever we use clauses, there are two types of clauses, dependent clause or independent clause. For example, I say that if he works hard, so this is a dependent clause. It means we have to tell what happened. If he works hard, then what happened. So you would ask me, when I say that if he works hard, then you would say, then what happened if he works hard. So we have to give the result, then what happened. So when we use clauses, we also use commas. For example, I say that dependent plus independent. For example, I say that if he works hard, so this is the dependent clause because it doesn't stand alone. It needs another stand. It needs explanation. Then what happened? So we would use comma when we are connecting dependent plus independent. It's mean two clauses, dependent and independent. So that time dependent plus independent. So in this sequence, that time when we write the sentence, so that time we would use comma in between. He will pass. If we write independent clause first and dependent clause later, for example, I say that he will pass if he works hard, so that time we would not use the comma. He will pass if he works hard. Here we are not using the comma because this is working as conjunction if. So that time we would not use the comma. So we can say that if we write the independent clause first and dependent clause later, that time we would not use the comma. So if we are writing two independent clause, so that time we would also use independent clause. If we use two independent clause in a sentence, that time we would also use comma. So let's see an example here. They offered him a job and he accepted it immediately. These are both sentences are independent clause. If we see that they offered him this is the complete sentence. It doesn't need any another sentence to explain it. So it is giving its own meaning. So other sentence is also the complete sentence. It means it's a independent clause. He accepted it immediately. So before coordinating conjunction and or but. So these three are called coordinating conjunction, and if we are using two independent clause and we use coordinating conjunction in between the sentence to connect both independent clause, but before we use comma. If we don't use, it would be a common error. So you have to keep in mind, sometimes we don't use. No doubt it's sometimes it is not used, but we have to use, otherwise it would be a common error, common splice. So I think this is the end of my lecture. So if you have any type of a question about comma, if I have missed any point in my lecture, so put your question in the comment section. I will try to reply your question. Thank you so much.